Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another episode of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. And this morning we are speaking with another of the candidates for the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education. Virginia Alvarez is the Chief Business Official and Human Resource Manager at the Montecito Union School District. Virginia, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us this morning.
Thank you, Jerry. It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Let me ask you one thing. Why in the world do you want to be on the school board? What's your reason for running?
Well, Jerry, if it's not now, when? These are such difficult times. And let me tell you, you're right. The life of a board member is nothing, it's not glamorous. I have worked in the public school system for 30 years. I have worked along board members for about 20 of those 20 years. So I have a pretty good idea of what I'm getting myself into. But being that these are such difficult times, I really feel for the teachers, the parents. It's so difficult. The parents are juggling their work, being home with their kids to school their kids. The teachers are juggling their own life, their own challenges that were brought on by this pandemic. And they have to teach in a whole new environment. This is really, really difficult times. We are dealing with so many unknowns. We don't have complete information. We have conflicting information. We have a lot of ideas, a lot of opinions. And the impact of COVID-19, has brought financial problems, health problems, and it's scary. It's scary.
So what do you bring to that set of, universal, really big issues that you're talking about? What would you bring to the school board?
Well, that's where I see myself as bringing a lot of value to the board. I live these challenges every day in my work life. And I'm very, very familiar with the requirements that a school district has to meet to continue the educational program. I'm also very familiar with the requirements that the district has to meet for its employees. In addition to that, Jerry, I'm deeply, deeply concerned about the learning loss. There's a huge learning loss happening right now because of the remote instruction. You remember in March, we closed unexpectedly. None of us were ready. And as it is, our districts, our unified, was already facing several challenges, what they call the achievement gap, which is now called the learning gap. Such high number of students not meeting the standards. About 20% of the students of the district are English learners, and about 65% of those students were already not meeting the standards. And now with the learning loss, this is going to increment that problem. This is going to increase that learning gap. I'm extremely concerned about that. In addition, if you look at the composition of the district, about 50% of the students are in the free or reduced meal program. That's really alarming, because not only are the students, most of them in the portion where they're not meeting the state standards, but they're also the most impacted by the closure. So you asked me, what do I bring to the school? I bring vast knowledge, vast experience, and we need to set programs, targeted programs that focus on this achievement problems. And not only the achievement, but also the emotional impact. Let's be honest. Let's think about those kids that are away from their peers, away from their teachers. That's going to have a long-lasting impact. The academic gap, it's going to be here for a long, long time. And as a district, we're going to have programs, not only for the immediate needs, but long-term needs of this problem.
All right, let's drill down on it a little bit. As you point out, test scores, 45% at grade level proficient in math, 6% proficient in English language arts. And and that's the overall. That doesn't really get to the learning gap piece of it that you reference. So what could you as a board member do, or what would you seek to accomplish to address that's not been done?
Well, what's been done is not working. So what I like to do, I was reading an article yesterday, and I mean, it's a big puzzle, right? You can't say one size fits all, because that's not going to work. I mean, I know when I came to this country, I spoke no English whatsoever. And a program cannot just be delivered for everybody. We have to meet students where they're at. It's not enough for us to say, okay, you have textbooks, you have iPads. That's not enough. I always think of somebody who's a swimmer. If the students are taken to a pool and say, okay, we all going to swim. Well, there's students that are excellent swimmers, and there's students that are going to need a lifeguard. They're going to need, a lifeguard and a life vest, little floaties. And we as a district need to make sure we have those specific programs in place. For example, we need to have a very robust tutoring program for students that need that little extra help, that little extra floaty, that life jacket. We need to have targeted, focused programs for students that are falling behind, because it's not that they don't want to learn. They want to learn, but they may not have the tools that are necessary to bring them up to grade level. That's what I want to see. I want to see targeted programs. I want to see outcomes. I want to see these programs to be evaluated, to be assessed. And if they're not working, then let's do something different. But let's go ahead.
No, finish your thought, please.
What I was going to say is, let's not wait. Let's not wait till the school year is over. Let's look at what's happening right now. What results are we getting? And if we need to change direction, then let's change direction, because it's impacting students.
Well, let me ask you about the politics of this. There's 8 candidates running for 3 seats. There are 3 quasi-incumbents who've been on the board for 4 years, or have been on the board for 4 years, didn't get elected. But so if you've been following what they've been doing, what I hear you saying is that, you know, it needs to get better, that they're not doing the job. Is that correct?
Well, I'm saying it needs to get better. Yes. I mean, I look at the numbers, I look at the data, which is the same data you have. All you have to do is look at EdSource. And I'm asking myself as a board member, if I was a board member, I would be asking myself, what's happening? Why are 60% of the 20% not at grade level? To me, that's a crisis. You have to look into that. And you also have to ask yourself, okay, now with the closures, what's happening to these students? How far behind are they're even falling farther behind? What am I going to do about that? Because that's my responsibility as a board member. And I know recently that they voted for the Meta Academy, or the Meta program, which I believe one of its components is that they'll start teaching in the maternal language of the students, the dual immersion. I'm very hopeful about that program, because like I mentioned to Delaney when I spoke with her, I believe my ability to learn the language so quickly was because I had a very strong foundation in my maternal language. I was completely literate in my maternal language. So my hope in this new program that the district's implementing is that it will give us those results. And I would want to know, I wanted to see evaluated on a regular basis.
Okay, and again, you know, if you've been following what's been happening at the district or at the board for the last year or two, you know that there's been a lot of conflict over equity being the prime goal, cultural competency, ethnic studies, and that there's a group called Fair Education that feels that a lot of the resources that are going into that may be taking away from more fundamental ways of teaching reading or teaching other things. Where do you come down on the ethnic studies requirement, which the district has just implemented?
Well, as you know, that's going to be a state requirement, right?
Right.
I mean, so cultural proficiency, I think, is of extreme importance. I mean, look at our state, look at the composition of our state, right? And appreciating, learning our culture, different cultures, I think it's very, very important. Now, as far as equity is not the same thing as access, as I mentioned before. Some students will need additional support, and being able to provide that additional support is what's equity. Other students do not need that much support because they already have other resources, have different background. But as a district, we should be able to meet the needs of all of the students and focus, okay, what do we need to do to bring the equity, and without forgetting the other students as well.
One of the other sort of flashpoints of conflict, both legally and politically at the board, has been the large contract for implicit bias training, which they have given to a group called Just Communities. Where do you come down on that issue?
Well, Jerry, if I was a board member, first of all, I'm very, very much interested in process. Number one, school budget reflects priorities, right? We spend our money where we think it's most important. And to award contracts of this magnitude, I would want to do my due diligence. What I would want to do is have different vendors make presentations at the board. It's
So
no
a
different.
competitive, more of a competitive bid type situation than
Exactly. A competitive bidding situation where they're interviewed at a board meeting. So that gives the public the opportunity to hear what they have to present. It gives the board an opportunity to ask questions, to discuss it as a body. In addition to that, and even before we go out for bids for this project, I would want to have clear outcomes. What am I looking for? What is the
How
end
do you
result?
measure success, in other words?
Exactly. I mean, you remember Steve Covey, begin with the end in mind. Okay, how are we going to measure success? Are suspensions down? Are we building bridges? What are we doing? I would want to ask first. And once I have a clear understanding as a board of what I'm looking for, then you put out your request for proposals and you interview these people. Make sure that everyone has a fair chance. And now let's move forward. Let's say whoever we hired, right? Now let's evaluate their performance. Where's the data? Where's the analysis? I love data. I love analysis. That's what's going to tell us if this is working or not. I think Santa Barbara Unified hired UCSB a few months back to look into this data, but because of COVID-19, everything's on hold.
Right.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Just one more question on the ethnic studies thing, because the district actually got ahead of the state. It put this in place before the state curriculum and so on was final. And I just want to read a little thing that's been called to my attention about the English 9 ethnic studies class. Students in these courses will study race through the intersections of social identities such as ethnicity, culture, gender, sexuality, ability, language, immigrant status, and class. They will analyze indigeneity, aspects of decolonization, white supremacy, oppression, and privilege, and work towards empowering themselves as anti-racist leaders who engage in social justice activism. I've heard from some parents that are concerned that making social justice activism the point of a course is not what they're looking for. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's the way that it's delivered, Jerry. I think the teacher's going to set the tone of how this curriculum is delivered. It's to me, it's like we approach topics that can be controversial. How are we approaching them? Are we approaching them in a way that, like I said before, is building bridges, is building understanding? We need to be aware of our history, all of it. I mean, that's an educated person. But at the same time, we also have to show compassion. We also have to show empathy. We have to show respect. And I think that's the challenge. And that's what the district has to make sure that the person or persons that are hired to deliver this curriculum, that they are competent and that they will deliver this message from an educational point of view, and that builds bridges, that builds community. I think that's something that's lacking in the district, a culture of inclusivity. And I think that's the reason that it has created a lot of problems, a lot of distrust. And I think that's a challenge that we have before us. And that's one of the things that I would like to do if I was a board member. I want to work extremely hard to build that culture of inclusivity.
Good. Okay, that's let me switch topics on you a little bit. In terms of the pandemic, I think, as I recall, Montecito Union had kind of a hybrid program that was ready to move ahead before the governor stepped in and said nobody can go to school because the county still on the watch list. How do you feel about that? Do you think that there should have been more room within, the obvious emergency situation that we face for individual districts to craft individual responses to it?
Well, yes, you're absolutely correct. We're actually ready to open for summer school. We were going to do a 2-week summer school program, and that Friday, the governor said, nope, no in-person instruction. So we canceled it. We were ready to go on Monday. So your question is, should decisions be made locally or by the governor? Well, there's so many things to consider, Jerry. And being that I'm in the thick of it every day, I'm going to tell you, to me, the health and safety is everything. I mean, if we don't have our health, what do we have? Nothing. And we have to take into consideration that this is a global pandemic. I mean, people are dying for this. This is serious. And schools that have opened in other states had to close down because of children becoming infected. I mean, and when we think of kids, they're resilient and maybe they carry less of the virus. We don't know, but there's so much that we don't know about this pandemic. And then they take it home to their mom, to their dad, to their grandparents. And as a board member, I would not want to live with that. I want to make sure that, number one, I'm following every single guideline, that we are following the CDC, the Santa Barbara Public Health Department, Cal OSHA, that we're providing all the PPE, that the classrooms are ready, the 6 feet distance, all of those requirements. And on top of that, Jerry, you also know that even though the governor said no in-person instruction, he also gave that little loophole. He said, okay, they may apply for a waiver if they meet this criteria. And that decision will be made at the local level. That'll be between the school district and the Santa Barbara Public Health Department, right? Well, one of the components for any school to open was that we had to have a robust testing plan for employees and students. And that testing plan is quite challenging because we don't have enough testing in Santa Barbara. I mean, the testing, I believe all the testings are mostly, test kits are mostly given to big cities like LA, Oakland. For us to test all of our employees and our kids, that would take a lot, not only of organization, which we did, but we need to find a testing place. And to find a testing place would be extremely difficult. In addition to that, other districts that are larger, like Santa Barbara, for example, I mean, they have thousands of employees. How are you going to test everyone and all of the students? So that's a really big challenge.
Would that be a criteria that you would see as not only necessary but sufficient if every student and every employee and every teacher was tested before the classrooms were opened up again?
Well, that was one of the criteria in the requirements to open the school, a waiver. That was a criteria that was already set. Now, are you asking my opinion if I think that's enough?
No, I'm saying, is that going to be what has to happen before Santa Barbara schools go back?
Well, if right now, today, if we wanted to apply for a waiver, yes, we would have to have a testing and plan, and we would show that we tested the employees. But the good news is
And
that
the students or just the employees?
students too. But as you know, our county is doing quite well. So we might get off the list and we will be able to open. So we, as a school, we have to be ready to open, which is not going to be from day to night. It's going to be about a 14-day period before we open.
All right. So say that happens. Say we're able to open up with a waiver or in some way, and then there is an infection or two infections. How do you handle it then? Would you see shutting it down again, or trying to figure out how to manage with the classrooms continuing to be open rather than putting the kids in and taking them back out again?
Well, see, that's another one of the challenges, Jerry. We don't have
That's what I'm asking you.
You're asking me, let me tell you, right now we don't have a good tracking method, infection tracking. I mean, I call the public health myself because we want to be prepared. We want to know how to do it, what to do. And according to the Santa Barbara Public Health, let's say a classroom is, a student in a classroom or a teacher is infected, right? Well, before we even open, we need to have a plan of cohorts. So for example, we're going to have like the 6th grade students will be a cohort. They're going to eat together. They're going to play together. They're not going to be with all the rest of the students. So if one of the students became infected or a teacher, then that classroom would be closed down and potentially the whole grade level, but not the entire school. Now there's a percentage. I believe if it's 5% of your population is infected, then the whole school would close down.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the complexities are just so challenging. I mean, for example, I have 3 grandchildren. They go to the same school, but they're in different grades. And when I go pick them up, or how do they get home, then they're obviously mixing out of their cohort and so on. So it looks like we're going to be in distance learning for a while.
And then you also remember, I mean, I work at elementary school. My whole mentality is elementary school with the little children. For them to keep their mask on, I mean, are we going to tell them, no, you can't hug your friend? I mean, it's a high risk and it's very difficult.
All right, we got a couple minutes left. Virginia, let me ask you about the finances of the district. There's been widely publicized problems with the food services program and a lot of controversy about the real estate deal, the armory and the stadium and so forth. What would be your approach to kind of having oversight of the finances, the budget?
Well, Jerry, again, I think this is where I bring a lot of value to the board because I've been doing this for so many years. I mean, maybe someday you'll have a few hours and we can talk about school finance, and that's one of my favorite subjects. And
are you one of the 5 people in California who understand Proposition 98?
Well, perhaps. I would dare to say perhaps, but we can have that conversation. But you asked me about the financial challenges that the district's facing. Well, as a board member, I know exactly what questions to ask. Not only do I know what questions to ask, but I also know if I'm getting the right answers. I mean, it's a shame that so much money was spent on the stadium. As a school district, we always ask ourselves, whenever we do a facilities project, we have to go to the competitive bidding process. And we ask, okay, is it going to be on time, on budget? If a project is behind schedule and over budget, would you hire that contractor back to do your house? Probably not, right? So we have to.
I think we did, but that's.
Oh, did you? Okay, then we have to have a conversation, Jerry. But anyways, like I said before, due diligence has to be done. I know exactly what to ask. I know if I'm getting the right answers. I also know to give clear direction. What are we looking for, and are we getting it? And as far as the armory, what's the plan? What are we going to do with this? It's sitting there. Let's do something. Can it be generating revenue? Let's think about it. Let's be creative. So that's something I would want to do.
All right. And let me just ask you quickly about the campaign. How are you campaigning? I mean, how do you campaign for an elected office at a time like this? What's the strategy here?
Well, Jerry, as you know, you can tell right away, I'm not a politician. I've never done this before.
Oh, I don't know. You could have fooled me. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. I don't know if I should say thank you or not. I'm not sure if that's a compliment. But in any case, the campaign is very different than what we're used to, obviously, because of COVID-19. So we are using social media quite a lot. We have a Facebook, we have a web page. We're doing Zoom right now. We're going to be dropping literature at targeted areas. We're doing a lot of word of mouth. So that's what we're doing, but we have a very good campaign. We have a robust campaign. I have an experienced campaign manager, and I have many, many people who are supporting me, and I'm very grateful. So we're doing the best that we can.
Okay. All right. And if people want to know more about your campaign and where you stand on issues, do you have a website, or how do they get in contact with your campaign? Okay, there it is.
Alvarezforschools.com.
Okay. All right, Virginia Alvarez, thank you so much for taking the time, and stay safe, and good luck in the campaign.
Well, thank you, Jerry, and you stay safe as well.